AITA for refusing to help my sister with her kids and telling her she can ask our parents since I'm so ungrateful, childish, and spiteful. I am the youngest of two. My sister Elizabeth is 28. Growing up she was the golden child and I was the scapegoat. While she could do no wrong, I could never do anything right where our parents were concerned. Her opinion and feelings held all the weight while mine held none at all. My parents have described Elizabeth as the perfect daughter and their dream come true. They also lived in a country with no abortion access when mom got pregnant with me. I believe because they didn't want another child or because I look like my mom's deadbeat father that I was treated as I was. Elizabeth and I were not close growing up. Sometimes she would throw the favoritism in my face with questions: why don't mom and dad ask what your favorite food is? Why do they never take you on special trips? Why do you have to do chores to earn birthday and Christmas gifts? I was 12 when I spoke to a trusted adult who said golden kids sometimes don't realize how wrong it is and can be really messed up by the favoritism but can grow to be better people. I was encouraged to keep the door open and told she might be my biggest ally. So even though I often got punished for crap she'd do, like sneaking out, I hoped. 3 years ago Elizabeth came to me and said she hated how our parents treated me and she was sorry for being insensitive as a kid. We got close, which I loved. She told me she basically had no contact with our parents. I found out a few months ago that it was a lie and she was always in contact with our parents, and I found this out thanks to her throwing a party to celebrate the birth of her second child. My parents were there and commented that they were glad they had a child to give them grandkids, and since they would only ever have 2 grandkids, they could spoil them rotten. Elizabeth beamed. Elizabeth's Mill asked about me and Elizabeth scowled at her for asking. It really hurt to see her react like that. Elizabeth asked for my help a lot: babysit, pick up groceries, come help with the kids, etc. She would mention mom and dad and how great they were as parents and how they'd be even better grandparents. I reminded her they were terrible parents to me. She rolled her eyes the first couple of times. But then she said I was ungrateful and childish considering all they had done for her, and she said it was spiteful to be angry at them after all this time. I told her I had every right to be, and she said I hold on to petty shit because I'm spiteful. I brought up the fact she lied about having no contact with mom and dad and she called me childish again. My sister's husband was injured and she started to struggle with the kids and seeing him. She asked me for help with the kids and I found out she only asked me because our parents were busy and she didn't want to inconvenience them. I refused to help her and told her she should ask our parents since I'm so ungrateful, childish, and spiteful. She said I was an asshole for my response and lack of help. AITA. Comment. Sorry, pretty, I really think that her apologies were less than genuine. What she realized that above all is that a sister is another free babysitter to add to her roster, for when the parents aren't available. I suppose her husband is an only child, or that there is a reason that makes it easier to just reach out to you than asking her in-laws for help when you guys' parents are too busy to take care of her kids. I'm really sorry, and you deserve better, but your sister is just as much of an as your parents. I think you would be far better off without all 3 in your life. None of them are ever going to change if they haven't by now, and your sister either honestly believes she's better than you, or just doesn't care how badly it hurts you as long as she remains the favorite. Okay, but you now know for certain that she was lying to you for the entire time and that literally nothing whatsoever had changed. And yet you are still talking to her now? And you care about her thoughts and opinions, for some reason? Why? Golden children are often very insecure and very narcissistic. She likely thinks she deserves good things because she is better than you, and you deserve bad things because you are worse. It's how they rationalize the positive treatment and positive reinforcement. This leads to entitlement, and if you don't capitulate and bend the knee, they can lie, cheat, and scheme to get what they want, because after all it's for the greater good, their own self-interest, and you are a bad guy who would only squander your time, money, and other resources on your inferior self. Go no contact with everyone. Neglected kids often build a cold outer shell to protect them from emotional damage, but desperately want the approval and validation they never got. It's rough. Take care. Your sister only plays nice to you when she needs something from you. Go no contact with both parents and sister. She's a full-grown adult and still taking you for granted. Cut them out, reduce your stress. I also recommend seeing a therapist. Don't bottle up childhood grievances, speak to someone. Your family is terrible, your parents don't recognize their mistakes, and your sister supports them even though she's shown you that she was fully aware of the impact your childhood had on you. Your sister tries to manipulate and use you. Don't do her any more favors and let her deal with her children. I mean, they are huge AHS no matter what. I get your mom hating her dad, not an excuse to treat you badly, but why would your dad hate him enough to punish his child who happens to look like his Phil? It just feels like an excuse for something else. Either way, I'm sorry that your family is awful. Might be time to cut them out and find your own family. You clearly are unfamiliar with the dynamic of a narcissistic family. They often marry enablers, so what the narc says, goes. The spouse of a narc is oftentimes the hench, person, of the narc. There was no reason for my parents to view me as lower than trash, but the firstborn was their golden child and I was very different than her. They thought if they bullied me enough, they could turn me into her. Turns out, people are born with personality and no amount of hatred, abuse, and neglect will turn one person into another. After being a parent of two very different kids, it is immediately apparent how little I have to do with the personality that came with. Parents can bring the best out of their kids or bring the worst out of their kids with their actions and behaviors. Next story 2. AITA for telling my stepmother that by her standards I am better than her? It sounds weird and I may very well be the but I'm not sure I regret it even so. Background: my mom died when I was 4. My dad remarried when I was 7. We'll call my stepmother Sheila. Sheila is the personification of the trad wife trope, and while she's not quiverful movement, she comes from a similar background. Basically, her entire self-worth is wrapped up in how many kids she has and how nice her house is kept. She has a lot of disdain for career women, especially unmarried, childless ones. Needless to say, I do not like or agree with Sheila, and I have no idea what my dad sees in her. My mom was the opposite. My teenage years were one long, constant argument because, 1. I have refused numerous times to be adopted by Sheila, 2. I have 6 half-siblings and I refuse to help her raise them, and 3. I am pretty much everything Sheila disapproves of. My dad tried to mediate as best he could, but it was a difficult situation. Needless to say, I do not go home often. I keep in contact with my dad, but I ignore anything from Sheila unless it's an emergency. I completed my surgical residency not long ago, so I took some time off for a vacation and a quick visit with my dad before I really get stuck into my practice. I agreed to come to their house for a cookout, knowing that I would probably be annoyed, but it was something nice my dad wanted to do for me. Now, I don't have children or a partner. I love my career and I like being solo. Still, when I was in undergrad I figured if I'm not going to use my eggs, someone might as well get some use out of them. So I did 3 rounds of egg donations and put the money towards med school. As a result, at last report I have 8 biological offspring. Sheila decided to start her usual "when are you going to settle down" nonsense, and I was set to ignore her as usual, but then she said, "Don't think you're better because you have money, a woman's worth is in her home and children." I said, "Well, that would mean I'm still better than you because I have more bio children than you do, a nice home, and a successful career." She just stared at me for a minute and left. She didn't come back outside while I was there. My dad called later to ask what happened and said that even though she shouldn't have started the conversation in the first place, it was a low blow. She couldn't have more children after the last one, and she was very upset to be reminded of that, plus she has always thought that I look down on her. I do, but not because of her lifestyle choice, more so because she's so judgmental about it herself. Anyway, my dad wants me to apologize. A couple of the older half-siblings have sent me radioactive texts about it. I think she walked into that one, but given her fertility issues and knowing how much self-concept she has wrapped up in a big family, it might have been a little over the line. AITA. Comment. Right? I don't know what the conversion rate per baby is, I forgot to ask. 8 is way beyond what I expected, but it's nice to know I have super soldier eggs that will cling to the uterine lining for dear life, I suppose. I did opt for open ID, so it's going to be interesting when they all start hitting 18. Your stepmother sounds like an old-fashioned religious lunatic who has been brainwashed into believing that a woman's place is in the kitchen and is to be used as a breeding mare. It is also none of her business in regards to your personal love life, and if you choose to be single for the rest of your life is none of her business and shouldn't pressure you into anything you don't want to do. She sounds very judgmental as well. These types of people try to push their lifestyle onto others. Simply because she wanted to have a bunch of kids, she expects you to do the same. Your life and career path will have more meaning and contributions to society than hers. She hasn't achieved anything extraordinary. At least 10? I'm sorry, but what the heck? Are your dad and SD rich? How can they afford 6 kids, let alone 10? That's just irresponsible. Also, how are they emotionally supporting 6 kids? I'm of the opinion if I need a special minivan to ferry my kids about, there's too many. You can 3 abreast car seats in a larger normal car now, so that's the limit in my mind. Anything where I need special cars or kids have to share bedrooms with more than one sibling is far too many kids. I know that's not everyone's view, and I actually stopped at 1 because honestly, I don't enjoy motherhood much. I love my kid, he's great, but I don't want to do it again. I'm all for you do you, but 6 or 10 is madness, because how do you afford to give them all the things they want or need unless you're rich as Croesus? I have heard of people who are addicted to caring for babies, as if they are dolls. Once their last child is too big to satisfy their desire, they have another one. I suppose once they hit menopause they start clamoring for grandchildren. Considering how the older children are likely to get progressively less attention, one would think at least one of them is likely to end up being a teen parent. Have you had this conversation with her before about what you want in life? Did you explain to her that you love what you do and kids aren't in the cards for you? If this is a conversation that has already happened multiple times, Auntie, she needs to mind her own business, to be honest. Her single-minded way of thinking is what I assume is the reason why you two never had a good relationship. If she didn't want a measuring stick used to measure her, she should stop measuring me with that stick. I said nothing to her, she didn't say to me. If she thinks it's rude when said to her, then she should stop talking to others that way. Moving forward, I'll continue treating everyone in my life with the same level of respect they offer me.